Hey everyone, Diavolo here, and today we are dropping in like that battle bus Will Smith spots at the start of the 2018 YouTube Rewind and covering the final part of Jujutsu Kaisen. Of course, subscribe if you are new around here and leave a like as it really helps out with pushing my content to a bunch of new amazing people. So, remember how the trio were on their way to help save Yuta? Well, before they even get there, Maki screams at Yuta, who somehow has miraculously returned to his original body. Like, what the freak happened to actually saving this dude? I assumed these last 3 chapters were going to be that, but either way, entering behind them, Megumi states that he really wants to apologize to everyone, though his apology is dismissed by Maki, who says that he has nothing to apologize for. Speaking up too, Yuji tries to apologize but is interrupted by Kusakabe, who states that the fault lies in Gojo, who didn't kill Yuji from the get-go. It was never Yuji's fault, he was just a victim of Kenjaku playing Jujutsu terrorist. Despite being in the pro-execution camp from the get-go, Kusakabe reminds them that only the adults were to blame for what transpired, not them. Moving past that for now, Yuji then asks Yuta how he managed to return to his body. Explaining that it was because of Rika, Yuta reveals that after he transplanted his brain into Gojo's body, Rika sustained his body using reverse curse technique. Still, Yuta assumed he was absolutely stuffed and he knew he was going to pass on once the technique burnt out inside of the domain. Yet, once his own technique recovered, he was stuck in a state of suspended animation. In that state, he was able to reconnect with his external storage of techniques and Rika that eventually made it back to his original body. Still standing over him, Maki chastises Yuta for his actions during the fight, believing that the sorceress could have won more easily if she ambushed Kenjaku in the Lake Gosho colony and Higuruma carried a recording of Inumaki's curse speech. Inumaki though relays that curse speech can't really be activated more than one time simultaneously. While the recording is being played, the ability is considered in use, as such, only one tape recorder is allowed to even start with. Destroying the grumpy Maki's plan even more, Todo states that he wouldn't have even been able to target Maki with Boogie Woogie, which was vital for the sneak attack with Yuta to succeed in the first place. Furthermore, they were also necessary to stop the rampaging curse spirits released by curse spirit manipulation. Walking over as well, Panda states that the timing backlash from curse speech would have killed Inumaki if Sukuna was in any better condition. Over in the corner of the room, Higuruma, who, how in the world is even Bro actually alive to even start with? Like, I swear he died, and the fact he's only got a broken arm as well is actually just mental. Anyways, he interjects by saying that Sukuna would have killed him if Yuta was around. Higuruma says that it was his decision to use Inumaki's recording inside Yuta's domain instead of his technique, since deadly sentencing forbids all acts of violence. Kusakabe though points out how it is amazing that a guy who's only been a sorcerer for 2 months is alive after everything that he just went through. Stating that it wasn't intentional though, Kusakabe obviously believes he should have died to repay his debt to society. Meanwhile, Maki continues her scolding, stating that the fight would have been different if Miguel and Leroux joined in from the start. Dogpiling in on the 2 foreign sorcerers as well, everyone unanimously agrees. Yuta, however, desperately tries explaining that the 2 said they wouldn't even help to start with, even though they did show up in the end. Seeing Maki get progressively more and more annoyed though, Yuji tries to defuse the argument by saying how Yuta's curse tools helped him hide his fingers and he also prevented Sukuna from opening his domain a second time. Hakari then joins in, and instead of delving in and giving us all of the info we actually never got in his battle against Uraume, dude just drops another mighty revelation, revealing that they were all able to wait inside a floating Rika, then quickly leave and attack after Gojo's defeat. Todo says that there is a lot he is responsible for too. Meimei had helped him prepare for Sukuna's domain, yet he wasn't able to save Choso or Yuji due to just how dense Sukuna's curse energy was in the domain center. Ino tries to say that he's to blame and wishes Choso was saved by Wee Wee instead of him. However, Yuji points out that if that was to happen, he would have died. This outcome is no one's fault. Speaking back up, Maki exclaims that she's not blaming Yuta either, like she actually got hit by 2 black flashes as well, it's just that However, girl never says it, but I think it's pretty obvious at this point that it probably had something to do with her liking him, as oldest card in the book boys, when a girl is mad at you for absolutely no reason, she's probably gooning over you in secret, but you know, either way, moving on. Miwa awkwardly says her entire role of protecting Maki and acting as her marker made her extremely worried. Butting in on her though, Kusakabe reminds her how he said to not even get involved to start with, but she rebukes him, claiming that she didn't even fight and if she told him the plan, he would have rejected it anyway. Hikari, then literally edging us some more, says he wanted to help in the fighting against Sukuna. However, Orome was just too strong to defeat quickly. Proudly speaking up, we can see that they all have regrets. However, he adamantly claims that no one can deny he's the MVP of this battle, which, you know, is fair dude. Man saved, I don't know, like how many people, like 8 or 9, literally to the point Sukuna got mad at him for interfering throughout this fight. Either way, after a small squabble between Karara and Wiwi, where the new shadow style was brought up, Kusakabe points out how it was a convenient excuse. Mei Mei, then having sat down with a fat grin, remarks that she won't deny anything. Intrigued, Hikari wonders if by new shadow style they mean dealing with the binding vow that forbade Simple Domain from being taught to clan outsiders. Affirming this, Kusakabe explains that the inherited binding vow of the school's Simple Domain was created by Ishiya Sadatsuna. This person created it with the intention of Simple Domain being inaccessible to curse users. As generations then went by, the ability was no longer of public interest and it eventually became a trade secret. In the current day, the clan essentially monopolizes the technique and invites disciples to learn it before having them undergo unnecessary binding vows. This is because, after all, the new shadow style is the foundation of sorcerers without techniques. Another part of it though is that people who learn this technique cannot refuse the head of the school if they ask them to mobilize. Plus, on top of that, apparently the head of the school absorbs the user's lifespans, giving me that kind of like Tengen vibe if you know what I mean. Not a single person even knows who the head of the school is, which is why it's hard to tell if the lifespan contract even exists or how it functions. It's said though that when the head dies, the school's best disciple succeeds them. No one else is notified though, and only the top student is made aware, which means they technically have no way of figuring out who it may be. Kusakabe then says that the only one who can render binding vows null is the school's head. From what he's heard, no one among the best students know anything about the head. Cutting him off though and jumping back in, Mei Mei relays that he means there wasn't anyone. Smacking himself on the back of the head, Kusakabe lets them all know he is the new head of the Shadow School, and everything to do with that lifespan stuff isn't an issue anymore. Which is like, bruh, Gege really just wanted to explain everything that was going on with that kind of school and that storyline before the story ended itself. Either way, sometime earlier and entering a random knick-knack type store, Mei Mei chucks a Big Win Ultra Sauce packet on the bench and asks for her price. The old lady confusedly asks what she means about a price, and Mei Mei airily asks for the price of her old, haggard life. Starting to sweat, the oldie asks how they knew about their location and that they were the clan's head. Laughing while saying she asked someone with the proper information, the oldie gasps, wondering how anyone even knew. Continuing, Mei Mei reveals how this person had been gathering disciples for years, to a point they rivaled even that of the big three families. She knows she wanted to take over the Jujutsu world, including murking those big three families. Stunned to silence, the old hag realizes that it had to have been Tengen who fed her this info. Mei Mei knows this person had waited years and years, slowly draining the lifespans of their disciples, all to see something. She thinks aspirations like those almost seem priceless, but now, with the Zenin clan annihilated, they stand on the cusp of a decisive battle wherein the Kamo and Gojo clans could face destruction. Angered, Mei Mei states that there were sorcerers whose lives would have been saved if this old hag didn't monopolize the Simple Domain. More than anything though, what really annoys her is the fact that this thing was trying to turn her brother into damaged goods. That alone made her death inevitable. Elsewhere now, we find Megumi and Shoko at the gravestone of Sumiki. Crouched down, he thanks Shoko for preparing his sister's body. Replying that it was the least she could have done to prepare her for her next life, Shoko goes on to express the annoyance she feels over Gojo not letting her take care of Gero's body. Obviously, she is referring to way back when Dad murked him, and how if, she cremated Gojo's body then likely a lot of what happened wouldn't have occurred the way it did. As they then leave the cemetery, Megumi answers a call and leaves Shoko, while she stays behind. Pulling out a cigarette, Shoko looks at it for a moment, before deciding to throw it in the trash. Over at the one and only Hida Holy Mountain, it is revealed that the previously consumed Master Tengen was found among Sukuna's remains after he was ripped from Megumi. This in turn means that as long as Sukuna's remnants are preserved, then Tengen's barriers around Japan won't disappear. To sustain the lifetime of the remnants, they were then placed inside of the Holy Mountain, where they can be maintained for a while longer. Elsewhere, Noritoshi, freaking man's finally the only Kamo again, returns to Japan with his mother and her family. In another location, Maki gives Daido a katana-styled curse tool, causing the man to burst into tears. She explains to him and Mio that the culling game has lost its purpose. From here, they plan to have Yuji and Hana strip cursed objects from the incarnated players, in a similar way to how they did, obviously with Sukuna and Megumi, along with recovering players who were abducted by the American military. Maki subtly tells the two incarnated men in front of her to hide in Tokyo since the capital is still declared off-limit and has a gathering of cursed spirits. While Daido is happy that, he can continue to practice his blade work, Mio is left somewhat disappointed since he finds wrestling with cursed spirits extremely boring. As they then go their separate ways, Daido asks Maki to fight him when his time comes, to which she agrees. In a small apartment somewhere else, Charles starts drawing his manga, while the Shueisha employee whose finger he broke way back in the past supervises him, which is kind of crack up to see that bro ended up getting the job even after abusing and physically hurting one of the employees there, but either way. The two discuss printed manga, with Charles admitting that he ain't as good at drawing as he thought. Over in a cafe elsewhere, Takaba tells his new comedy partner that they should hold off on these sexual jokes. It's meant to have dirty ones though, since, they're doing some crazy materials. Confused, this mysterious partner considers dirty and sexual the same, much to Takaba's frustration as he questions if he was even listening. Leaving the cafe now, his partner mentions how Takaba's comments on rehearsing can be interpreted as a sexual innuendo in itself. Returning to Sendai, Amaya reunites with the student he and his group bullied. Wanting to know what the hell he even showed up here for, Amaya walks up to the young man and bows while apologizing for his previous actions. After a moment, Amaya looks up to see that the dude had run away. Watching him run, Amaya drops back down and reflects on what he needs to do to improve his own behavior. Meanwhile, Higuruma returns to his office and meets with his former associates. Shizumu comments that no charges were actually pressed on him for his murders. Obviously, bro assumes it's the work of the Jujutsu headquarters and jokes that he's heard they're gonna work him to the bone. As the lawyer representing the surviving families of those Higuruma felled though, Shimizu, with a tear in her eye, declares she will request a retrial and prosecute Higuruma. Sighing, cause all bro wants to do is repent for his actions, Higuruma says he's counting on her. I personally feel like dude kinda did pay his debt throughout the massive battle that we just had. It was kinda crack up though that he chose to give Yuji his one-shot weapon only for bro to miss when Kusakabe was able to land hundreds of slashes on Sukuna moments later, but we won't get too gassed up on that right now. Back over at the Goto Jujutsu High in Tokyo though, Angel comments that Sukuna's deception against Hana during their battle likely means that the memories regarding her have probably been unearthed by Megumi. Finding Megumi in a hallway, girl stumbles out of pure embarrassment for, the damage she took. Seeing this and remembering the damage Sukuna did along with feeling responsible for it, because, obviously it was inside his body, Megumi swears to be Hana's right arm henceforth, causing the girl to misinterpret his words as a marriage proposal. Flustered, Megumi stutters out that he has to go on this super important mission, so they will totally have to talk later on. Now meeting up with Ajichi and, going over this mission. According to his report, 2 weeks ago, a woman returns to her apartment and finds her fiance's eyes to be abnormally large, leading to the first year's last mission. Meeting the victim, the first years find that the man appears to be completely normal, even more than normal. Like, bro's actually kinda stocky, got that Chad Unk vibe if you ask me, but either way, moving past that. His fiancée wonders if he's the one who's cursed. However, after finishing the man's examination, the group comes to the conclusion it's actually her, and Nobara takes her off to get fixed up. Meanwhile, Yuji and Megumi speculate on the nature of the culprit, with Megumi believing it to be the work of a curse user, specifically an awakened player of the culling game. With a fat grin on his face, Yuji points out how this is just some curse user harassment stuff that they can easily get done. A little while later, Nobara reveals that she is unable to feel any seal or the influence of a curse technique on the woman. Due to this, she concludes that the curse user has to be somewhat nearby and that they should leave to gain some distance from them. Yuji agrees with Nobara's idea, but Megumi isn't exactly with it. He considers it too simplistic and potentially ineffective, especially if the technique is suited to covert work. Instead, he wants to pinpoint the origin of the curse technique rather than rely on distance alone to solve the problem. Yuji asks what the goal is then, and Megumi continues to explain how there are people everywhere. Even if they checked each building, there are just too many blind spots. Getting struck by his unyielding genius, Yuji says all they need to do is go to a large open field and they'll see the culprit. Dumbfounded by this, Megumi tells him that it'd only work if their target was a complete idiot. Stepping in to back his boy up, Nobara points out how Yuji is fast as fuck though, so you could probably catch him and knock the dude out. Still, Megumi latches onto his previous point and says that all they'd have to do is wait till things cooled off, then start the technique back up. While getting ridiculed by Yuji, Nobara asks about sending them off on a fat holiday. Again, Megumi shuts it down by saying the user knows their exact location through his technique, and they've only got their eyes to try and find him. Screaming out annoyed over his freaking nitpicking, both Yuji and Nobara complain that bro just doesn't shut the hell up. Walking through a door now, Megumi says they'll just have the duo leave the technique's range, then strike the moment it reactivates. To do this, they are sending them 150 meters or 40 stories up onto the top floor of a nearby skyscraper. Ajichi will then keep an eye on the elevator buzzer and the entrance while the main trio finds a good lookout and waits for the user's reactivation. As the random couple then go up the elevator, the curse's effects suddenly disappear. The afflicted woman, who's obviously been unable to see her fiance's face due to the curse, finally sees him as normal again. Right on cue, our main trio notice a random sorcerer attempt to reactivate his technique from the building below. Noticing Nobara jump down towards him, the man questions who she happens to be. Slowing her descent by digging her hammer into the building, Nobara along with Yuji land on the building across from the sorcerer. Of course, our Muppets think this is going to be easy, only to be immediately hit by the sorcerer's curse effect when they get within his range. The two still end up joking around, while the man actually tries to run off and make a quick escape. However, Megumi, having activated his divine dog totality, quickly detains the curse user. They then take this curse user to the woman who was cursed and question if she's ever met him before, to which she claims she actually hasn't. Raging out though, the man screams out asking who she thinks bought her that bag. Turns out that she worked as a hostess in the past and doesn't exactly remember the man who, like, let's be honest, bro got scammed. Like, that's a hostess's game, bro, and you got absolutely cooked. Noticing the man's glum look after he gets in the back of the car, Yuji walks over and tries to cheer him up. Looking down at his lap, the dude tries to ask what happens next, but comes to a personal conclusion that he's past the age where he should know how to communicate with people. Still, he tried placing all of the blame on her for something that he obviously did. Skipping back to the past, Yuji says he thought he'd be doing some switch training with Gojo, and dude replies that he gets it and he will at some point, it's just he feels like they've had a little bit too much Satoru Gojo. Instead, he actually wants Yuji to be a bit more forward thinking. He knows that he wants him to carry on his dreams as well, but if he does pass on, knows there will be a point where his students will reach even higher heights than he did. Out of all of his students, Gojo thinks it's probably best that one of them forgets all about him and develops a completely different kind of strength. Wondering why dude seems so out of character at the moment, Gojo tells Yuji it's his confidence. He's never been this confident before and expects amazing things from his students in the future. Back in reality, Yuji gives some props to the man as he acknowledged that he messed up, and that's all that really matters, before echoing his teacher's words in a hope to set the man on the right path. After this, as the main trio walk off, Nobara questions what exactly Yuji did with Sukuna's final finger, and bro just says he tossed it. Not content with that, Yuji lets them know that it's fine and the item should make a perfect talisman. Smiling, Yuji then walks off with his friends. In another dimension, no one other than Mahito laughs as he notices the King of Curses appear in front of him. Welcoming him to the Pathway Souls walk as they return to the endless cycle, Mahito asks him if he was lying to himself and everyone else. After all, he was never even living by the words that he preached. He wanted revenge against those who resented and persecuted that cursed, unwanted little wretch. Questioning what the difference even is, Sukuna says he only lived in the matter he knew, then stops and realizes that no, he indeed had two different paths he could have travelled, yet he couldn't help but spit out the curses stirring deep within his brain. Should there ever be a next time though, Sukuna with his hand around Urame says that maybe it'd be nice to take another road. Stuck alone on the pathway as Sukuna walks off, Mahito gets angry, calling Sukuna boring. He then throws a physical tantrum running around and screaming in complete darkness. In the present, Maki, Yuta Ikotsu, Panda, Inumaki Toge, Kurara Hoshi, Hikari Kenji, Nobara Kugasaki, Megumi Fushiguro, and finally, Yuji Itadori are all seen with smiles on their faces. Except for Megumi, cause frickin' bro's a bum, you know. Anyway, skipping over to a familiar place, we find a shrine's door slightly cracked open. Inside, Sukuna's last finger remains untouched in the same booth where it was originally introduced in the series' first chapter. Thank you, Gege, for the last 6 years of weekly enjoyment. What I'd do to pay you back is utterly insane. Just freaking hit me up in the Twitter DMs. I know you're hiding on there in some solo account you've got. Either ways, I hope he has some bangers in the future, like different series-wise and all that kind of stuff. I'll always be there to peep it when he does drop something. If it's not my thing over time, then I'm not going to read it, obviously, but you know, I'll always be there to check out new things that he does do. Endings are endings just in general as well. Like when it comes to this, they can always hit differently for everyone. To be honest, ending something in a way everyone is happy, especially in the manga industry, just seems hard as fuck. Either way, subscribe if you have enjoyed the video and leave a like, as it really helps out with pushing my content to a bunch of new amazing people. But for now, it's been your professional degenerate Diavolo, and I will see you all in a bit. Bye.